Welcome to the channel. Today, we're exploring some unbelievable story. Stay tuned and let's dive in. I'm a 38-year-old guy who feels like his world is collapsing. I like my 33-year-old wife, Victoria, but I am frightened that she is doing something behind my back. The notion is too humiliating and ridiculous to discuss with friends or family. Worse, I believe one of my coworkers slept with her, and everything I've seen so far supports my suspicions. Let me explain how we get here. Victoria and I met in 2020 in a mall in our city. I was at the food court, standing in line, when I saw her. The funny thing is, I was supposed to go to another restaurant, but the queue was too long, so I switched. That's when I spotted her standing toward the front, looking very gorgeous. She saw me gazing, laughed, and told me she wasn't in line for lunch. Victoria said that she was waiting for her cousin, who worked there. Her breaking the ice rescued me since I couldn't think of anything to say. We hit it off as we spoke, and I tried to be as amusing and appealing as possible. When I offered to buy her anything while she waited, she requested strawberry lemonade. After I got it for her, we spoke until her cousin arrived. Before she departed, I summoned the bravery to ask for her phone number, which she gave me. That was the beginning of everything. I tried all I could to win her over. We went on dates, attended events, and even spent time with our friends as a group. By 2022, we were married. We've established a life with 3 wonderful children, 2 girls and a boy. Our road has not been simple, but we've made it work by limiting our evenings out at clubs and concerts while still finding time for rare pleasure. Victoria has always been an incredible spouse and mother, and I consider myself very blessed to have her. Victoria is Cuban, extremely attractive, and has always stood out. My pals used to mock me, thinking I'd scored big. She resembles a cross between Gal Gadot and Priyanka Chopra, with a voluptuous physique, tattoos on her arms, and her distinctive ponytail, which she always wears in selfies. Victoria works as an interior designer with her sister, and they make a good living together. Meanwhile, I work as a maintenance guy, which I've enjoyed for the last 6 years. Things took a terrible turn on Thursday. Nathan works in the shipping division. We're not precisely pals, but we're acquaintances who talk often at lunch, generally about basketball. We spent the most time together outside of work throwing dice in the parking lot a while ago. My vehicle had brake troubles one weekend, so Victoria had to transport me to and from work. The first time she arrived to pick me up, she was 30 minutes early and had to wait in the parking lot. That's when things began to feel strange. When I got out of work that first day, I saw my wife, Victoria, laughing and conversing with Nathan and another colleague, a lady from the office who I'll name Rachel. After introducing her as my wife, we made some light chat before returning home. Looking back, I believe that's where things may have begun. That week, when Victoria came to pick me up from work, I saw she was spending more time with Nathan and Rachel. I'd sometimes see them in the office, hanging around and listening to rap music on Nathan's Sony headphones, which were linked to his phone. Victoria told me she loved talking to Rachel and hanging out with her since Rachel and Nathan lived nearby and were good friends. I didn't think much of it at the moment. Victoria came into the office to speak with Rachel, and Nathan seemed to be harmless on occasion. Victoria receives a lot of attention, particularly on Instagram, so I've always tried to keep my fears under control. Even when I saw her chatting to Nathan without Rachel there, I told myself not to leap to conclusions. If I told Victoria about my doubts, she would be unhappy and would wind up bickering in Spanish every day. But everything changed last Thursday, and my suspicions that Victoria was cheating on me struck me like a ton of bricks. That day, while I was leaving work, I said my goodbyes to a buddy on the phone. He replied and informed the guy on the other end that it was me. His tone piqued my interest since it seemed as if the guy on the phone knew me. I inquired who he was talking to, and he grinned, claiming it was an old colleague, and handed me the phone. He claimed the individual wants to say hello. Tyler, an old colleague who had gone some time before, revealed out to be the culprit. We met up, and he revealed that he had relocated to Denver to work with his brother in a warehouse. He even joked about how much money he was earning today. After our conversation, he requested me to provide him my phone number via Facebook so that we could communicate later. I agreed, gave him my number, and returned the phone to my buddy. Tyler contacted me before I even got to my vehicle. When I picked up, he immediately inquired whether I was driving. When I answered no, he urged me not to start because he had something essential to tell me first. His tone was unusual, which made me apprehensive. When I inquired what he meant, he said I couldn't tell anybody what he was going to say. I hesitantly consented. He began asking me whether Victoria still came to my work and if Nathan was still speaking with her. His questions triggered a flood of apprehension in me. I said yes to both, then he delivered the bombshell, "I think Nathan slept with your wife." Hearing those words sent shivers down my spine. I asked Tyler how he knew this, and he said that while he worked with us, he often witnessed Victoria and Nathan chatting. Nathan, he said, would flaunt to his coworkers about how much he wanted to sleep with Victoria. Tyler stated Nathan routinely made remarks about her physique, particularly her buttocks. I asked Tyler when he had seen Victoria and Nathan together, and he replied it was generally about an hour before lunch. He added that, although Victoria sometimes spoke to Rachel, he spotted her speaking with Nathan more often. Tyler added that although it seemed to be innocent flirtation at first, things began to feel strange when Victoria began visiting the office on Saturdays while Nathan's department was working extra. This surprised me since I seldom worked extra, so I had no idea why she would be there. I asked Tyler whether he was certain about this, and he persisted. He said that on one of her Sunday trips, Nathan's department had a lot of downtime, so Nathan would play music over his speaker. Tyler said that he overheard loud Spanish music and witnessed Victoria and Nathan engaging in improper behavior. Tyler recounted witnessing Nathan clutch Victoria's neck while she danced for him. He stated she seemed to be having fun, laughing, and putting on a show, as if she were competing. Tyler also said that Nathan raised Victoria's top to display her leggings. Tyler added that Victoria did not try to stop him and instead continued to laugh and dance. Tyler underlined that everyone in the room witnessed what happened. Hearing this made me feel frozen. I questioned Tyler again if he was definitely certain, and he strongly verified it, insisting he wasn't blind. He suggested I keep Victoria apart from Nathan and Rachel. I thanked him for informing me, but then hung up, mortified. My mind raced as I drove home, filled with wrath and grief. Tyler revealed events that occurred 6 or 8 months ago, and the notion of what may have transpired since then was awful. Had she gone farther with Nathan? When I arrived home, Victoria was on the phone with her mother. After some small conversation, I inquired whether she had seen Rachel that day, to which she said yes. I followed up by asking whether she had seen Nathan, but she answered no. Her response astonished me since, from what I'd observed, they behaved like the Three Musketeers. Victoria dismissed it, claiming Nathan wasn't around much and that it was largely just her and Rachel, which I knew was false. Then, without further word, she went by me into the kitchen and began texting on her phone. Her reaction left me extremely wounded. It was clear to me that she was lying about her connection with Nathan. I stood there watching her cook supper for our children, overcome with grief, rage, and fury. Right now, I am trapped. I'm torn between wrath and sadness, and I have no idea what to do. I need documentation of what is actually going on, but acquiring it will be tough since it includes individuals from my office. I can't endanger my career, and Tyler's description of the event, although unsettling, isn't strong enough to warrant legal action or divorce. Victoria could easily explain it away, however Nathan would just deny everything. I'm thinking the worst, that Victoria cheated on me, but I need proof to back it up. Without evidence, I may lose everything. A divorce and her family will definitely pursue me. I have to walk gently, but I am determined to discover the truth. Things have become worse, and I'm more persuaded that my colleague had an affair with my wife, Victoria. To add some context, my vehicle required brake repairs, so Victoria had been picking me up from work. During these trips, she became friends with Rachel, who works in the front office, and Nathan, a shipping department colleague. Victoria gradually started attending my office on her days off to hang out with the employees during lunch. A few weeks ago, I received a terrible phone call from an old colleague named Tyler. He warned me Nathan may have grown too close to Victoria. Tyler said that he had spotted them conversing quietly, and it seemed like they were flirting. This often occurred right before Nathan's lunch break, which Tyler found strange. He also claimed that on Saturdays, when Nathan worked extra, Victoria would stop by, which aroused even more suspicions. Tyler claimed he didn't want to tell me anything at first, but something happened on Sunday that changed his mind. He claimed that he heard Spanish music playing on the cargo pier and wanted to check it out. That's when he saw Victoria dancing for Nathan. According to Tyler, things immediately became more physical. Nathan grabbed her by the neck and pulled her shirt to reveal her buttocks. Tyler thought they had gone farther than that. Tyler recognized Victoria easily because of her tattoos, her normal ponytail, and the fact that she is Cuban. He also said that she would bring Nathan lunch and stay out with him during his free time on Saturdays. I was unaware that this was taking place since I had never worked overtime. When I challenged Victoria about her connection with Nathan, she flat out lied, stating they were not close. This enraged me since it was an outright falsehood. Everyone at work saw them hanging together at lunchtime. After that, I began sleuthing to see what I could find, and there were red flags everywhere. Victoria would remain out all night, pretending to be with friends. She'd chat on the phone on the back porch, chuckling and saying things like "You're crazy," or "I can't come over tonight." She'd also leave the home unexpectedly, without mentioning where she was going. Everything pointed to something drastically wrong, and I knew I had to discover the truth. When I asked Victoria who she was speaking with on the phone, she generally said her sister or Rachel. Being at work had begun to feel strange, particularly after Tyler's call, since I recognized how pleasant everyone was to me despite knowing more than I did. Tyler's knowledge was like a master key, allowing me to see what was going on behind me. Victoria and Nathan had no clue I knew about them. My only regret was that this material was 6 months old, and a lot had probably transpired since then. I had been so preoccupied with work and raising our children that I forgot to notice the changes in Victoria. Tyler, using rose-tinted glasses, showed me how blind I'd been, while Victoria leveraged her connection with Rachel to get access to Nathan. Victoria had grown considerably more secretive in the last 6 months. She seldom spoke to me, except when absolutely required, and the most of her chats were with her pals. She began dressing up more often, and after being out until 2:30 a.m. One night, I observed her wearing a black thong. It worried me since she never wore undergarments like that. She generally saved the stunning bikinis for Instagram photos on holidays, but today was different. This was intended for someone else. Seeing her like that stopped me in my tracks. I could not even argue. I simply walked out of the room. Tyler's discoveries had completely flipped my life upside down, and the writing was definitely on the wall. Prior to his call, I had always tried not to feel envious. Victoria is stunning, and she receives a lot of attention on Instagram. Her images, even older ones, get likes and comments, many of which are improper. It was difficult being a spouse to someone who had hundreds of males following her online, but I always tried to be sympathetic. I expected things to change after we were married. I decided to purchase a voice-activated recorder to get confirmation of what was going on. If my suspicions were correct, I was ready to divorce her. After I obtained the recorder, I decided to attempt to speak to Victoria and see if we could work things out. I traveled with her to the grocery to discuss the situation. I explained that, although going out with friends was okay, she still had obligations as a parent. She accused me of being controlling and said that she had the right to have pleasure without spending all of her time at home or at work. I informed her that although I understood her desire to have fun, her abrupt trips without reason were disturbing. Surprisingly, Victoria promised to be more considerate of her obligations and my emotions. For a time, it seemed like we were making progress, and I believed we could work on our marriage. But a few days later, Nathan phoned her, and everything fell apart again. Earlier this week, Victoria informed me that the kids wanted to see a Pixar movie with their older relatives on Sunday. She stated she wanted to take them to see the movie together. I thought it was a fantastic idea and was glad she was spending more time with her children. However, a few hours after they had departed, my nephew contacted me. He said he'd heard we had a video game he wanted to play and asked if he could come over after the movie. I told him it was all right if Victoria was willing to bring him home. What he said next really threw me off. He informed me that Victoria had dropped them off at the movie and was not staying to see it with them. I was perplexed since Victoria had clearly said that she would watch the movie with the kids. That's when I realized it was Sunday, the day Tyler had claimed Victoria would meet Nathan during overtime. Everything was making sense, and her lie validated my assumptions. Looking at the time, I concluded that if anybody was working extra on a Sunday, they'd still be there. I phoned my wife, Victoria, but she did not answer, which irritated me. Determined to acquire answers, I phoned my workplace and requested security. I talked with the woman there and she verified that the men were still working. I hung up, furious, wondering whether Victoria was really with Nathan. I got in my vehicle and headed to my employment, enraged and determined to find out the truth. On the way, all I could think about was the treachery and how absurd the situation had become. I'd already told Victoria about it previously, assuming she knew how serious I was, but this time I wasn't going to let it go. If Nathan slept with my wife, I was over. When I got at the parking lot, I instantly saw Victoria's automobile. My rage grew. I rushed inside the facility and made my way directly to Nathan's cargo dock. As I walked in, his team leaped up, evidently astonished to see me. They seemed to be ready to go, but my presence interrupted them. I looked around and didn't see Nathan or Victoria, so they were probably in the trucker's lounge. I made my way to the lounge, but one of the crew members attempted to stop me, claiming I didn't belong there. I cautioned him to back off or face the consequences, and he was clearly unwilling to confront me. I pushed by and went to the lounge, not wanting to waste any more time. The trucker's lounge was a tiny, mostly empty space with faulty vending machines. I knew I'd find them there, and as I approached, I heard Nathan moan. My assumptions were confirmed. Hugging the wall, I looked inside and couldn't believe what I saw. Nathan sat on a sofa, shirt open, trousers and underwear down, with Victoria on her knees in front of him. She was entirely focused on serving him. Nathan stared down on her as if he possessed her. It was a horrible spectacle that I never expected to experience. I took out my phone, knowing that I would need evidence. My hands trembled as I captured at least 6 seconds of their treachery. Then I stormed into the room, yelling, "Screw you." Nathan was astonished, but Victoria's response shocked me even more. She did not even seem ashamed. Instead, she seemed angry, as if I was bothering her. Still clutching Nathan, she stared at me and said, "What are you doing here?" Her nonchalant demeanor irritated me. I exclaimed, "Screw you. This is how you treat me." Victoria groaned, hiding her face, and said, "Oh my God." She wasn't ashamed of what she was doing, just embarrassed by my response. I yelled at her every name I could think of, but all she did was roll her eyes and scream, "Can you please just leave?" Her apathy, as if our marriage didn't exist, wounded worse than anything. She didn't care that she had been discovered or that she was ruining our family. She just wanted me to go so she could continue her relationship with Nathan. Her total disrespect for me and our marriage left me astonished and more enraged. I couldn't believe this was the lady I married and the mother of my children. All I could do was shout, "How could you do this to me?" After pretending to love me, Victoria eventually said, "I don't love you like that, okay?" Hearing those words almost knocked me unconscious. She urged me again, furious, to just go. When I informed her I wanted a divorce, all she said was, "Okay." No apologies, no regrets, just apathy. I left the warehouse, got into my vehicle, and drove home, enraged. When I came home, I couldn't control my wrath. I hit the walls and yelled at the top of my lungs, "How could she do this to me? How could the lady I thought I knew transform into someone so unrecognizable?" I realized I was utterly beyond the poisonous environment she had pulled me into. As of today, she has not returned, and I think she is remaining with her sister. She will have to explain the matter to her family, but I am not concerned at this time. Whatever happens next, I have indisputable proof of her adultery, which I intend to utilize throughout the divorce proceedings. Victoria was never in love with me. She enjoyed the lifestyle and what I did for her. Looking back, the indications were there. I really didn't want to see them. Victoria did not want a true relationship, she wanted to be desired. When Nathan showed her that attention, she compromised all we had. Relationships like that do not endure because individuals like Victoria ultimately expose who they really are. To prepare myself for what was ahead, I purchased a voice-activated recorder. However, I only needed to utilize it once. That was all it needed to confirm Tyler's warning to me. All I had to do was wait for the appropriate moment to reveal the truth. That moment arrived last Sunday when Victoria said that she was going to see a Pixar film with our children and their older relatives. Initially, I believed her, but then my nephew, who was at the movies, phoned to inform me that Victoria intended to pick them up later. That took me off surprise since she had clearly said that she would be watching the movie with them. It didn't take long to put things together when we hung up. Tyler had previously said that Victoria often visited Nathan at work on extra periods, the same shift on which she was spotted dancing for him months before. I decided to validate my assumptions and headed to her job. When I arrived, her vehicle was in the parking lot, which confirmed my suspicions. I entered the premises and made my way to the little trucker lounge, where I imagined they could be. I peeked inside and saw Victoria on all fours, Nathan holding her head in his lap. It was a terrible and irritating situation, but I knew I needed proof. I got out my phone, captured approximately 6 seconds of the action, and rushed in to confront them. I released an amount of rage I had never idea I was capable of. It stung even more when Victoria seemed furious rather than sorry about being caught. Nathan looked astonished, but Victoria had the audacity to beg me to leave. That pushed me over the brink. I asked how she could do something like this, and she replied coldly, "I don't love you like that," before asking me to go again. That nearly made me faint. I drove home in a cloud of wrath and sadness, trying to digest it all. After releasing my frustration at the situation, I ultimately calmed down and accepted the hard reality: our marriage was finished. Victoria did not love me, either as a companion or spouse. Looking back, I knew who Victoria really was. She wanted to feel entitled in the relationship, which I unintentionally encouraged by attempting to make her happy at all costs. She had persuaded me that being a good spouse required meeting all of her needs. I believed I was fortunate to have her since she portrayed herself as a trophy wife, always seeking attention and approval from others. Her love with social media only made matters worse, with a large number of followers, mainly males, and flirty comments on her postings. I had to acquire a thick skin simply to survive. Whether it was bikini photos from our visits to Los Angeles and the Bahamas, or her daily selfies, she desired attention. It didn't matter how dedicated I was to her. She will continuously look for the next source of affirmation. Now that it's ended, I've embraced the truth about who she is and that our marriage was doomed from the start. I realized it was time to tell my family everything. The first person I phoned was Daniel, my elder brother. When he responded, I let it all out, yelling about what had occurred and using as many swear words as I could remember. I went home after telling my brother. He claimed he had to do a brief errand but would come over later. I immediately contacted my younger sister to tell her the news. She lectured me, but she also added that Daniel had phoned her and was well aware of the issue. She hung up after saying she will check on me later. Not long after, she phoned again to say Daniel was on his way to pick me up and invited me to join him. She inquired where the kids were, and I told her they were at the movies with Victoria and I was scheduled to pick them up later. She wasn't delighted that the kids were with her, but given my state of mind, I thought there wasn't much we could do at the time. After hanging up, I was about to fall asleep when I heard Daniel's vehicle come up. When I answered the door, Daniel approached me, holding a backpack and his toolkit. Daniel's presence was consistently frightening. He had played football in high school and college, and his bald head and beard gave him the appearance of having just returned from the war. He approached me, hugged me tightly, and I couldn't help but cry, despite the fact that we always kept our emotions to ourselves. We both knew that was just what I needed. Following the embrace, he informed me that he had stopped at the shop and purchased new locks for the home. He stated the last thing I needed was to leave and have Victoria come back to get everything. After about an hour of discussing and changing locks, we went to Daniel's residence. He and his partner did all they could to make me happy during the weekend. Madison, my sister, also came over to show her support. Even with my family's urging, I couldn't get rid of the memories of what I had seen. I was hoping Victoria would confess, but after what I saw, I couldn't stop thinking about retribution. Payback was burning within me, and I wasn't done with it yet. On Sunday, Victoria's sister, Victoria, phoned me. Daniel first refused to respond, but when I reminded him that my children were with her, I accepted the call. Victoria inquired as to what was going on, and she said that she would not return to the home but would not explain why. I told her the truth: I had caught Victoria cheating on the job. There was a little pause before she began disputing everything, saying I was lying about her sister. After letting her rage for a while, I told her to hang up and I'd give her the evidence. She attempted to say something, but I abruptly stopped the connection. I quickly forwarded her the video and did not hear from her for the rest of the day. The next day, Tuesday, I went to work and talked with my boss about Nathan and Victoria. To my astonishment, he provided me a testimonial form so that I could submit a legal complaint. While I was filling it out, he expressed his condolences and asked whether I was certain about what was going on. I aggressively answered, I am certain, and even offered if he wanted to view the footage I had. He was taken aback and inquired if I genuinely had proof. When I acknowledged that I had, he returned the paperwork, stating that it was no longer required. He then took up the phone and phoned someone to report the incident. After we hung up, he said he had called the manager and requested me to submit the video to his email address so he could handle it from there. When the boss was planned to visit the facility in a few days, I informed him that I would not be going into work at that period, and he said he was about to recommend it anyway. Finally, Victoria phoned me back. I was astonished to hear she had talked with Victoria. Victoria asked me to speak with her that night because the children wanted to come home. I told her I'd take the kids, but I didn't want to speak to Victoria since I had nothing else to say. Victoria acknowledged that she had made a mistake, but demanded that I be the sensible one and consider the family. I felt unreasonable, but I maintained my attitude. I told Victoria I wouldn't speak to her since she had cheated on my colleague and humiliated me at work. I also claimed that Victoria had brought another guy into my home and I was expected to ignore all that had occurred. Victoria denied this, claiming that she only played about with him at work or at his apartment. I laughed and asked, how do I know that? For all I know, she could have slept with Nathan's crew while she was there. Victoria became enraged and denied it, and I wanted to know what really occurred. Victoria told me everything. Victoria had confided in her, and to be honest, I hated asking since I knew Victoria would never lie to Victoria, which made things worse. According to Victoria, when she first saw Rachel, Nathan was chatting to her, and Victoria told him she was there to pick me up while they waited. Nathan and Rachel began conversing, and every time Victoria came in, they'd linger around until I came out. Victoria and Rachel eventually became friends, and Victoria enjoyed spending time with them over lunch. Victoria said that after a time, Nathan started complimenting her, particularly her figure, which startled her, but she enjoyed the attention. One day, she made a mistake and told Rachel she thought Nathan was handsome, and Rachel ended up telling him what Victoria had said. Nathan then came too near and began making lewd remarks. Victoria played it off, but she confided to Victoria that she liked the attention and would think about it. I sneered again, wondering why Victoria hadn't simply told me about it so I could put an end to it. Victoria claimed she didn't want it since she enjoyed Nathan and his crazy behavior. I asked Victoria when it all began, and she hesitated at first, but when I threatened to hang up, she told me. She stated Victoria informed her about Rachel's sister's birthday celebration. I was aware of Rachel's sister's habit of making reasons to drink. Victoria went to the party with Rachel and, according to Victoria, Nathan was also there. Victoria was shocked to see him, but they ended up chatting and having fun. Victoria questioned whether Nathan was attempting to get with her, and she affirmed that he was. She said Nathan began dancing with her, but things soon turned more intense between them. When I questioned what she meant by aggressive, Victoria said that Nathan had requested her to twerk for him. Victoria stated she spun around and began twerking on Nathan. She added that Nathan was clearly enjoying Victoria's grinding on him, given the tight leggings she was wearing. After a time, Nathan began kissing her, and they eventually made out. Victoria said that following that, they would go out together, and the situation began to worsen. When I queried what she meant by escalating, the red flags started to appear. Victoria revealed that when she went to Nathan's apartment with Rachel, Nathan couldn't stop touching her, and Victoria let him. Rachel, witnessing what was going on, left them alone in the flat. Victoria said that after they made out, Nathan went down on her. After that, he continued attempting to do the same thing, and Victoria would sometimes stop him, but finally she did not. Victoria said that at one point, she began returning the favor. I questioned Victoria whether she did it when my children were around, and she told me that everything occurred at work or at Nathan's apartment. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and Victoria had the same reaction. She said Victoria acknowledged Nathan knew precisely what to do and that she admired how crazy he was. Victoria believed going down on her was the end of it, but Nathan wanted more. Victoria said that Nathan once twisted her around and pinned her on the sofa. She informed Victoria she should have fled at that time, but Victoria couldn't bring herself to do so. She allowed the situation to escalate, and Nathan grabbed her from behind. I was startled and had to ask Victoria how she could do this to me. Victoria stated she found the whole thing exhilarating, and the fact that it was wrong made it even more so. She also said that Victoria enjoyed Nathan's rebellious nature, and when he eventually got her, he did not disappoint. Victoria added that Nathan was so eager that she suspected the neighbors could have heard them. I could connect to it since while my brother and I were helping our aunt move out of her apartment, we heard explosions and machine gun fire coming from the flat below us. We subsequently discovered that someone was watching an action movie and the walls were so thin that it seemed like we were living in an action film. If Nathan's apartment was anything like that, I could see the neighbors hearing everything. If Nathan was acting as forceful as Victoria reported, I could imagine how loud it would have been. Victoria said that Nathan received anything he wanted from that point on until Tyler discovered the truth. It was meant to remain a secret, but Tyler proved to be more of a man than they had anticipated. Victoria was ready to continue, but I reminded her that the party and apartment setting were sufficient. She asked if I was going to be the rational one again and speak to Victoria, but I declined. I said I'd come back the following day to pick up the kids, but I had nothing to say to Victoria. Victoria claimed that if we both behaved obstinate, it wouldn't work, but I told her she had made a fool of me and that I would never give her that opportunity again. When I informed Victoria when I was coming to pick up the kids, she moaned and hung up in irritation. I felt fairly down after that, and it took me a while to recover my composure. A few hours later, I got a call from an unfamiliar number, followed by a text. It turned out to be a colleague I knew, so I was startled to hear from him. I was driving at the time, so I responded via Bluetooth. He inquired what was going on, and I said that I was simply doing errands. He then inquired whether I had anything to do with Nathan's firing, which utterly surprised me. He added that two men and a lady dressed in suits had come with her boss and proceeded directly to the truckers' lounge in the rear. This led me to believe they were looking for video footage in the lounge. Nathan was summoned into the office around 20 minutes later and ordered to gather his belongings. I confirmed my role and he stated he would have done the same. He inquired when I'd be returning and I said I'd work a half-day on Friday. He replied all right and the call terminated. I felt relieved and decided to treat myself to a nice supper that evening. The following day I had to pick up the kids, which I hated. I hadn't seen Victoria in days, so my brother Daniel joined me for support. When I arrived, the kids were overjoyed to see me and quickly informed me that their mother had been unkind to them and ignored them, so they were ready to return home. I saw Victoria in the kitchen, chatting on her phone and totally ignoring me. I ordered the kids to get into the van, and my eldest daughter requested if she could bring her iPad with her. Victoria reacted and shouted no, insisting that it had to remain with her. I assured her everything was all right and that I would accept responsibility for it, but Victoria refused. She said that she purchased it with the intention of keeping it till they returned. My kid was becoming angry, so I instructed her to wait in the vehicle. As she walked away, I couldn't believe Victoria was being so petty. That's when a massive dispute broke out. I did not hold back this time. I called her a hoe and she responded by calling me a rat for getting Nathan fired. She replied she didn't know Nathan like that, and I told her she might have declined. She said, "Screw you, go cry to my mama," and stated I was fortunate she didn't look at me. She said I should have battled Nathan instead of firing him. I responded, real women don't get that luxury, and I wasn't going to fight over a thoughtless woman. Then she called me dusty and pathetic, claiming she didn't like lame guys. I was so upset that I hurled a glass of orange juice at her. She narrowly evaded it, looked at me in surprise, and then flung a fork at my head, but missed. The argument progressed until my brother, Victoria, and Victoria's buddy stepped in. Victoria shouted that she did not need me and continued to rant. Next, my brother had to virtually take me up and drag me onto the porch to calm me. After I calmed down, I left because I was fatigued and lacked the energy to argue further. When I went back in the vehicle, I informed my daughter that her mother had stolen the iPad, but she didn't care. She just wanted to escape. I couldn't believe what I had just been through. Even though I had overreacted, it was satisfying to finally curse Victoria out. My children are now with me, and with the new locks on the door, this will remain the case. I had to deliver the news to the kids in a manner that they could understand. Their mother and I would no longer be living together. They were devastated, but understood. As I already said, the only thing on my mind right now is the divorce and getting the attorneys involved. I'm hopeful that the video will play a significant part in resolving the issues. My wife is definitely full of herself, and if she believes she will have a meaningful connection with Nathan, she is deluded. Nathan, or anybody else for that matter, will not wait for her. She's almost 38 years old and has children, and Nathan, contrary to her expectations, isn't interested in becoming the world's finest stepfather. I know Nathan better than she does. He's just using her for a fling. When he's finished, he'll go on to the next one, and the truth will strike her sooner than she believes. I doubt it will even take a year. At least now I have some peace of mind, but I still have to think about my children and my true family. Maybe even Victoria, should she ever seize through Victoria's crap. After all that's occurred, I feel like I've finally put my life back in order. The divorce is official, and although it was a difficult journey, I can now breathe again. My children are now with me, and we've established a new rhythm in our lives, one full with laughter, love, and tranquility. The house seems like a home again, and I no longer feel the weight of uncertainty hanging over me. It was difficult relaying the news to my children, but they understood. They were heartbroken at first, but I could see by their eyes that they trusted me, which meant everything. They needed stability, and I pledged to be the parent they deserved. That became my concentration. Simply being there for them, demonstrating that no matter what happened to Victoria or anybody else, I would always be their rock. It took some time, but I'm starting to feel like myself again. The anguish of betrayal has subsided, and a stronger version of myself has developed. I've surrounded myself with genuine people, including Daniel, my brother, who has been by my side through it all, and Victoria, who had the strength to disassociate herself from Victoria. She apologized, and although I wasn't expecting it, it demonstrated that not everyone I cared about was lost in the chaos. I won't lie, there were times when I wondered whether I'd ever find peace. But today, when I watch my children play in the yard, hear them giggle at supper, or see them get enthusiastic about the slightest of things, I know I made the correct decision. Life may not have gone as planned, but it has turned out to be better. I've also recognized that I'm ready to allow love back in, but this time it'll be different. I'm not rushing anything, and I'm not going to settle for less than what I deserve. I met someone lately. She's gentle, patient, and understands me. We like ordinary times together, such as a peaceful dinner at home or a stroll in the park. It seems right, and I'm not rushing. She does not bring drama into my life, she just gives tranquility, and I can feel my heart gradually opening up to it. I know I've gone through a lot, and I'm not foolish enough to believe it'll all be easy from here, but what I've realized is that I'm stronger than I ever gave myself credit for. The past does not define me. It's only a chapter in my tale, and I'm now writing the next one, which will be full with love, laughter, and the promise of brighter days ahead. I've found serenity, not just in my house, but also in myself, and with my children at my side, I know that the best is yet ahead. I'd finally made peace with everything. After all that had transpired with Victoria, I was fatigued yet oddly calm. The rage and hurt were still there, but they no longer consumed me. I'd realized that I couldn't undo what had occurred. Victoria's acts, no matter how hurtful, had already occurred. What mattered now was how I decided to proceed. I'd learned the hard way that sometimes you have to let go of individuals who don't treat you with the respect you deserve. The divorce was a difficult choice to make. But now that it was official, I was beginning to feel a feeling of liberation I hadn't had in years. I wasn't bound by Victoria's facades anymore, and I didn't have to be concerned about what she was doing behind my back. She'd made her decisions, and I'd made mine. I didn't know what the future contained, but I was certain that I could manage anything came my way. In the months after my divorce, I concentrated on my children. They were my number one focus right now. Every day, we made new memories together that were not stained by lies and deception. My children deserved a childhood of love and security. I made sure they understood how much I loved them and how important they were to me. I brought them to parks and beaches, and we spent weekends playing games and watching movies together. It was a new chapter for all of us, and although the pain persisted, there was also a quiet enjoyment in the little things. I also concentrated on healing. I couldn't keep dwelling on the same sad recollections. I needed to go ahead. I spent time with my brother Daniel and sister Madison, who were both quite supportive. They made sure I understood I wasn't alone and that I had relatives that loved and cared for me. Their assistance was priceless, and as much as I hated to admit it, I needed them. They kept me grounded and reminded me that I was deserving of more than Victoria had given me. It wasn't always easy, but gradually I began to find myself. I began doing the things I had been putting off for years, activities that made me happy. I enrolled in a photography class, something I had always wanted to do but had never had time for. I returned to the gym and focused on becoming in better condition. I started investing in myself again, which felt quite liberated. One day, while wandering through the park, I ran into someone. Her name was Emily, and she was compassionate, kind, and just what I needed. At first, I was unsure whether I was ready for another relationship. But Emily was different. She did not attempt to force anything on me. We spent time getting to know one another, and I started laughing again, something I hadn't done in a long time. Emily made me feel seen, heard, and understood in a manner that I hadn't experienced in years. It was as if she were a breath of fresh air with no goal. She wasn't attempting to change me or make me forget my history, she just embraced me for who I was. We took it leisurely, which I enjoyed. Emily did not put any pressure on me and was respectful of my limits. We went on dates, had lengthy chats, and spoke about our future goals. There were moments when I was hesitant to really open myself, but she was patient with me. I slowly began to trust her. I understood that maybe love was not finished for me. Perhaps I wasn't damaged beyond repair. And with Emily, I started to see the prospect of a happy future again. As the months passed, I remained focused on what was important: my children, my well-being, and my relationship with Emily. We spent the holidays together, and I was surprised at how natural it seemed. Emily was not like Victoria, which was obvious to me. She didn't require external affirmation to feel good about herself. She did not need to continuously seek attention or favor. Emily seemed pleased with who she was, which made me feel secure around her. I didn't have to worry about her betraying or lying to me. She brought me serenity. Thanks for watching. Do you believe that healing is possible after betrayal, or is it time to move on? Let us know in the comments, and remember to like, share, and subscribe.